Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Fantasy Filmball. My name is Matt, and I'm here with Dylan, and today we're going to be discussing Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu's new film. It's on the poster right there, Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths. So, Bardo, this is a film that we have been anticipating all year long, a film that we had taken the L on and said, yeah, this is a lock for Best Picture. This is a lock. It's getting in. This is one of the ones that's just guaranteed to be a performer. It's Netflix's #1 push. This is going to win the Golden Lion. This is going to be insane. People are going to love this. It's going to get a 90 Metascore.
No.
Yeah, it didn't do that. But one thing I will say about this film, which is less of a story and more of a state of mind, a film about Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu's experiences as a Mexican American, as an immigrant, as someone who sees himself existing in a liminal space between countries, between identities. It's a film that is very, very odd, and it's a film that is not going to please everyone. And when it premiered at Venice, it got horrible reviews, which it's still fighting its way back from, because they did release a new cut where they cut 20 minutes, and it has gotten better reactions. We both saw that new cut, and what do you think about the cut? Because personally, I liked it.
So if anyone has to take the big L here for Bardo, it's me. We do a fantasy draft of movies that we do for the award season here, and I picked Bardo 4th overall. You may be like, 4th overall? Everyone was expecting this movie to do really well. It's what I passed on is the big, like, you're stupid, take your L, hold it up.
Yeah.
I passed on The Fablemans, don't want to talk about it. I passed on Top Gun Maverick. And I passed on two, like, ones that it seems better than, like, The Sun and Empire of Light on the bright side. I passed on Fablemans, which seems like it's winning Best Director. It's most people's picture prediction for Bardo. And Bardo is a film with many faults. Say what you want about Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu movies, but they are all beautifully crafted. Whether it's the sound, the editing, the score, which he did himself in this movie, which I think is really good. The production design, the visual effects, and especially every Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu movie has breathtaking cinematography, usually the best of the year. All his films are spectacles. And Bardo's no less, honestly. Daniel Cacho Jimenez stars as essentially AGI and has to capture his essence and has to ground, like Matt said, the state of mind, because this is it's a movie with a story. Does the story really connect in any way? Not really. That's, I think, this film's biggest fault is its screenplay. It's something that you can't get behind, which I think a lot of, like, the early reactions, early people who saw it, I haven't seen the extended cut, but I think the issue is, like, people like, there's no story here, so what am I supposed to latch on to? What am I supposed to connect myself to? Why should I care about this guy rambling about his life? And I think if you can eventually get around to how this movie ends without spoilers and see what everything we just saw was supposed to mean, I think you can come like Matt and I out of this and give it a pretty high rating. Not a great rating, but a pretty high rating. But on the flip side, if you sit through this whole thing and you're like, why did I just waste 2.5, 3 hours? You're not going to like this film because it weaves in dialogue throughout to tell you exactly what's going on without you really realizing in the moment. Without spoilers, there's times where two characters can discuss, like, what's the point of a film or what's the point of life and stuff like that. And in the moment, you may be like, that's very on the nose. But at the end of the movie, you're like, oh, at least to me, I thought those were really good moments that have really elevated this film and its script, which I think is the weakest part of this movie. I fully understand why some people despise this movie or hate Bardo, but I can't wait to watch this again. In fact, I watched this on Thanksgiving, so I am thankful for Bardo.
I think that you touched on some stuff there that is very true. It's one that is so pretentious and up its own ass that it's very easy, if you're not on its wavelength, to just hate the thing outright. But undeniably, it's a technical marvel. I was thinking the entire way, I was like, man, it seems so easy to make an Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu movie where it's just like, have some surrealism, always point your camera directly at light sources. Like, if there's a light source in the scene, camera's facing it Always. Always. If the sun's in the scene, you're facing the sun. If there's light bulbs, you're facing the light bulbs. Always. Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu, special right there. Someone's got to float at some point. If there's no floating, you haven't made an Iñárritu movie. Absolutely. Like, that's just hands down. You need someone to float at some point. And lastly, there's got to be some form of, like, meta commentary. And that's the thing that I loved most about this movie, honestly, was how, yes, it was extremely pretentious. Yes, it was extremely up its own ass. However, it really felt like Iñárritu knew that, because he literally had characters come in to tell the main character of it, which is obviously a stand-in for him, to tell the character, hey, the events of the movie so far have been such pretentious bullshit, and, like, this is so, I don't know what the hell you're trying to say here, but, like, you're not fooling anyone, and you're not as smart as you think you are. And it was so funny to see that throughout the movie, that he, like, criticizes himself. Now, one thing I'll say about this, which I really liked, is that the whole thing, it felt like less of a story and more like a dream. It felt like it came right from his subconscious, where ideas just spewed out of him, and he just went, okay, I'm putting it all in the movie. Did all of those ideas connect? Did they all work? Not really, but everything's there, you know? And I gotta respect something so maximal, something so huge, and even if the things don't fully make sense, it's not a film that's made to really make sense or made to be dissected. It's a film that's made to be felt. You know, in Tenet they say, don't try to understand it, just feel it. And that's how I felt with Bardo. And you can understand all of it. Thematically, I think it's very, very easy to understand, especially once I afterwards looked at it. I'm like, what the hell does Bardo mean? And it's basically, it's a state of limbo. It's a state between two states. So, you know, to get into some spoilers here, it's like the coma, right? It's a state in between being living and dead. It's how he exists as an immigrant, not fully being from America and yet not belonging in Mexico either, just living in that in-between space. Being an artist who thinks that he's, you know, world-class, but also having to appeal to the world. You know, is he a genius or is he an idiot? Is he profound or is he void of meaning? All of these things Iñárritu is existing directly in the center of. And that's what this film's about. It's about existing in the middle of two distinct binaries and not really knowing which one you belong to, or if you belong to one of them. But the way that he approaches that, you know, it's not always meant to make literal sense or even metaphorical sense. It's just it's a vibe. It's a vibe. This is a film of vibes, and nothing more than vibes.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. Since we are in spoiler discussion now, as Matt mentioned, when you talk about dream sequences, this movie is literally a dream sequence. And I think that's why at the end of the movie, once you realize what you just watched, it all makes sense, or it all comes together a lot better. Because you're watching the moment, it's like, how did we get from train to room to studio to this to that? But once you realize why or how you're in that situation, you're like, okay, then it works. At least for me, it really worked there. There is issues here. As we mentioned, the movie was originally like 22 minutes longer. I still think you could cut about 20 minutes from this movie and not really lose anything and be fine. I rewatched the trailers last night after I watched this movie, and there was stuff in there I was like, oh, that's not in the movie. I really hope that they put up the longer cut. Will I want to watch the longer cut? Yeah. Would everyone? No, but I would love to see what did get cut and why it was cut. Because there's like one specific sequence here that does last for about like 15 or 20 minutes where the stand-in for Iñárritu is kind of just walking around a town, and some stuff happens, but I don't feel like the meta commentary there is really as strong as the rest of the movie. It's saying something, and something that maybe I personally don't relate to, so that may be why it's not as strong hitting for me, but I felt like that was like the weakest of the commentary throughout the film. However, this state of mind is something that everyone wants to know isn't an Oscar player for anything, because at the beginning of the season, like Matt mentioned, we thought picture, director, screenplay, locks, technicals, locks, probably some wins, and now it's kind of even a struggle if it may get into international feature in some people's eyes. So, Matt, obviously you're not the Bardo defender here, so you may be able
No.
to get the more realistic outlook for this. What are your thoughts about Bardo for nomination morning?
Nomination morning, I see 2 nominations, and on Oscar night, I see potentially 2 wins. I wouldn't predict it for either of those right now, but we'll see. So I'm seeing it getting an international nomination. I do think it's big enough there that it can get the traction. It has the visibility that it needs to get that nomination, and I think that the reviews are positive enough now that it's not going to be outright snubbed. That said, it is the type of movie that does get snubbed there. They don't really like weird shit in the international category. Then I'd say this is the thing that I do think it's a lock for: cinematography. The cinematography is so undeniably good. It looks so gorgeous that I don't see a world where this misses cinematography unless it misses every single precursor, which I think is just wild. That would be crazy to me if it missed all those precursors. I think it would be one of the biggest snubs of the year if this film did not get nominated for cinematography, because at this point, I think that it could win cinematography. It's between this and Avatar, in my mind.
I agree with you there with the 2 nominations. I think there is a chance for a little bit more, because if you look in the past, some of those cinematography and international combos do make their way into director. Not always, but you have Papakowski for Cold War, and as Matt mentioned, for this, just a cinematography nomination by itself, that branch is very inspired. They do what they want. They don't really care about other stuff. Like we've seen The Lighthouse in years past get nominated there, where it was not a contender for anything else.
Never
However,
Look Away. That was a big one. That was a weird nomination.
I still think, and this could be the biasness in me because I did like this movie. I do like Inuyuritsu. I think there's a world that this could be a director, a director 5, because of just how much of a director's movie this is. And we've seen the reactions from other directors that really love this movie. You can make the case, yes, Del Toro is his friend, so of course he's gonna love the movie. But to my knowledge, there's no relation to Barry Jenkins to Inuyuritsu. Barry Jenkins has been a supporter from the original cut of this movie, very vocal, saying this is his favorite movie of the year. He's seen like 5 times. I don't know how many are the first cut, how many are the second cut. So if those 2 people are so very adamant, I'm sure there's other people too. And with it being a surrealist type movie, with it being so weird and out there, this is such a bold vision, and I understand the case you can make. Well, they're going to nominate an international director that has a bold vision. You do Oslin for Triangle of Sadness, or Park Chan-wook for Decision to Leave. But Inuyuritsu's had proven track record. He's won 2 in a row. He's not going to win for this, but clearly they love him, and he knows that. He talks about this in the movie even as well. I wouldn't write him off. Is he my 5 at the moment? No, but I could see a world where he shows up nowhere, and on nomination morning, boom, Inuyuritsu Bardo is in there for Best Director. Outside of that, I think that's pretty much the thing. You got 3 and maybe a production design nomination, but production design historically, at least recently, has been very Best Picture heavy, and with this not really seeming like it's in picture, probably not there, but the production design of this movie is fantastic. And the one other tech I really want to give some love to is the sound work. The sound work here was so immersive, whether it is the opening sequence of the flying, what Inuyuritsu has to do, you have to be surreal, you have to fly. The breathing, or in various long takes, as Inuyuritsu always does, you have the sound design coming from your back left, your back right, forward left, forward right, where like whatever's happening on screen is only from that channel, which I thought worked really well. But yeah, overall, I could see a max of like 5 nominations, a minimum of 2. I don't think it misses international. I don't think it misses cinematography, but there's definitely a chance for it to miss. But yeah, that's Bardo. Obviously, I'm a very strong 8. What were you, Matt?
I'm a solid 8, I'd say. Maybe a low 8. No, you know what? I'm going to say I'm a solid 8. I liked it much more than I expected to, and I was pretty happy with the film in the end. Ultimately, to me, it felt like a mashup of 8.5, The Phantom of Liberty, and The Mirror by Tarkovsky. It was like a weird mashup of those movies, but like very meta. I don't know. Here's my final take that I'll say about it. It felt like a student film with a lot of money.
Well, here's the thing. Like Baby Mateo, I don't want to live in a world that's so cruel that Bardo has to miss Best Picture. So, with that being said, everyone out there who's seen Bardo, because this is a movie that I don't think a lot of people will see, honestly. It's traction online does not seem very high. When I saw it in a theater, I was the only one. Those posters behind there, they had huge stacks of them that no one was touching. And Netflix just put out an ad for all their December releases the other day. They had like 5 or 6 out in their main slate. Bardo wasn't there. Bardo was in the next section for the international movies that they have coming to the platform. So if you have seen Bardo, please let us know your thoughts. Were you as positive as us? Or were you like the original crowd for this movie that absolutely despises it and thinks it's such a slog and so pretentious? Regardless, let us know. We would love to hear. But this is Fantasy Filmball.